I'm Rantasmo, and the Birdcage needs more gay. I never actually watched The Birdcage until relatively recently, but I do remember seeing commercials for it on TV when it first came out. And even without truly understanding what the premise of the movie was, beyond Nathan Lane dressing in drag and Robin Williams dancing funny and the fact that Twyla is a funny word, Twyla! I think that may have been my first inkling of exposure to the idea that gayness was something that existed. Released in 1996, The Birdcage centers around Armand and Albert, a gay couple who live in the gayest part of Miami. Armand owns a drag club in which Albert performs, and he also has an adult son, Val, who reveals that he's engaged to the daughter of an ultra-conservative Republican senator. In what seems like an incredibly short-sighted scheme, Val convinces his father to conceal his sexuality and his Jewishness from his soon-to-be father-in-law, whose family values organization is at the center of a sordid sex scandal. What follows is a farcical dinner party during which Albert poses as Val's biological mother, and the conservative in-laws end up having to leave the club disguised in drag of their own to evade the ravenous media. And the straight people get married. Happy ending. Sort of. The Birdcage was an incredibly successful film. In fact, for a while it had the highest grossing opening weekend of any movie with an openly gay lead character. At least until this happened. The Birdcage is actually a remake of a 1978 French film called La Cage aux Folles that was unexpectedly popular in the US and actually spawned 2 sequels. The remake is quite faithful to the original, with a nearly identical plot and many of the same jokes. There are a few differences, however. For example,
"That's what you want to do, isn't it? We'll do it. Hit me. Go on. Go on. Hit me."
In the remake, this mostly comes across as just a goofy bit of slapstick, where in the French version, he actually punches him. Abuse. Maybe it's a language or a generational thing, but I find the American remake a lot more watchable. Williams and Lane's characters are still rooted in old campy stereotypes, which is one of the film's major criticisms, but they add a certain depth to their roles that I don't quite sense in the French version. The Birdcage makes use of one stereotype that shows up in a lot of media, which is the butch-femme relationship. While there are many real same-sex relationships in which one party is more masculine and the other more feminine, that's by no means the norm, and yet we see this all the time. In many cases, depicting relationships like this might just be an unintentional side effect of trying to give characters diverse personalities that you can tell apart from one another. But it still ends up reinforcing a heteronormative myth that romantic relationships have to consist of a feminine and masculine side. Nathan Lane's character is so feminine, in fact, that he seems to at least partially identify as a woman.
You know everything because you're a man, and I know nothing because I'm a woman.
You're not a woman.
Oh, you bastard.
Or at least he takes his drag persona incredibly seriously. But I think my biggest criticism about The Birdcage is that the characters are never quite taken to task for their actions. The conservative parents do get dragified as a form of comeuppance for their intolerance, but do they actually learn anything? If homophobia could be eliminated just by forcing bigots to wear dresses, we would have tried that. Actually, we should try that just to be safe. The in-laws do show up to the interfaith weddings, so they presumably do gain some modicum of tolerance, but it would have been nice to get a better sense of how they got there. But even worse, Val is never held responsible for coercing his parents back into the closet. He never learns his lesson, he never apologizes for forcing Armand and Albert to hide who they are, he has no real character arc, and yet he and Ally McBeal even get the end credits freeze frame for some reason. You don't deserve this moment, this movie's not even about you. But in spite of an ending that leaves things a tad unresolved, The Birdcage is a really satisfying movie. It was one of the first movies made for straight audiences about gay people who were sympathetic, without making them some doomed tragic figures. And it's really funny.
Chewing gum helps me think.
Sweetie, you're wasting your gum.
And even though some of the humor is arguably at the expense of the gay characters, especially the more effeminate ones like Albert and this guy, the real butt of the joke is a culture that forces people to be something they're not. And that's something that should be mocked, especially if you can do it in a way that involves wigs.